Hello everyone, this is Granny.
Today my video is a lot longer than normal, but I hope you'll stick around and watch it all. Those of you who are regular viewers know that I'm interested in history. That interest was stirred up 5 years ago when I was researching my husband's family tree. My husband had been told since he was a child that his family tree contained a very famous person. That person was Jessie Benton Fremont. Jessie was the daughter of a United States Senator. Senator Benton was one of the first senators from the new state of Missouri. He was the first senator to serve 5 terms and was there from 1821 to 1841. Among other things, he was a strong advocate for Western expansion, but he needed a champion to rally the public to his cause. When the senator was introduced to John Charles Fremont in Washington, D.C., he believed he had his man. When John met his daughter Jessie, it was love at first sight. Jessie was also thrilled with the attentions of the dashing young lieutenant. Against the wishes of her parents, they eloped. Senator Benton was angry at first, but then he got over it and was a staunch supporter of John Charles Fremont. John went on to lead 5 expeditions from their home in Missouri to the Oregon Territory. As for Jessie's part in this story, when John would go on his expeditions, and he went on 5 of them, he would come back and have to write a report. John hated this part of it, and Jessie was a natural writer, so she did the reports. Her reports were so stirring that they were in national newspapers all over the country, and a lot of people were inspired to head west. Here I'd like to explain that the Oregon Territory was a much larger area than what most people think it is. It was not just the state of Oregon. In 1853, they decided that the Oregon Territory was much too large for one state, and so they divided it down the middle, roughly along the Columbia River. The new Washington Territory needed a governor, and Isaac Stevens was chosen. As his nickname indicates, he was short of stature, very arrogant, and had a huge ego. As governor, Stevens intended to lead Washington to statehood and advance himself in the process. At this time, the occupancy of the Washington Territory was shared between the Hudson Bay Company, who was British, and the American settlers. There were a lot of hard feelings between the Americans and the British because of the War of 1812. But they were forced to deal with each other because the Americans needed supplies and the Hudson Bay Company were the only place to get them. The settlers were also forced to rely on Indian canoes to transport goods. Stevens was determined to move the Hudson Bay Company and the Indians out of the way to make room for more settlers. In the winter of 1854, he wrote the Medicine Creek treaties. He was anticipating the next wagon train that would be arriving in the fall of 1855. By this time, the Land Donation Act was in effect, and a settler would come to the Oregon Territory or the Washington Territory and could claim 160 acres. If they were married, they could get 320 acres.
As part of the treaty, he was allowing the Indians 4 acres per person for the reservation land that he had set aside for them, and they had no choice where they could go, and they were not close to the river, which was where they got their food.
Stevens was certain that the Indians would obey his rules because of the power of his office.
And he was very surprised when he found out that there was dissent in the Indian camps.
This led to the Indian Wars of 1855. The war finally fizzled to an end in 1856, but Stevens was determined to take his revenge. Stevens' principal opponent on the Sound was Chief Leschi of the Nisqually tribe. Many of the settlers were seeking revenge, and Leschi's brother Quymouth turned himself in.
As a result, Quymouth was under armed guard in the governor's office when he was murdered.
Even though it was well known who the men were who committed the murder, they were never prosecuted, and the governor was more upset about it happening in his office than about the actual crime.
Chief Leschi was later captured and tried and found guilty of the murder of Colonel Benton Moses, even though it was during a battle, during a war, and there were casualties on both sides.
On February 19, 1858, he was taken to a gallows and hanged. On March 4, 2004, the Washington State Senate exonerated Chief Leschi and recognized him as a courageous leader and a great and noble man.
Today, the Nisqually tribe are an important part of their community and are one of the largest employers in Thurston County.
Today, the majority of the scenery you've been looking at is in Thurston County, and much of it in the Nisqually Indian Reservation. This construction site is where the Puyallup Indian tribe is building a new casino. There's something up here I'd like for you to see. The story I've told you today was extremely edited and simplified for this format. But if you're interested in the history, there are a lot of books written on the subject. One in particular that I've enjoyed was a biography of Jessie Benton Fremont, written by Pamela Herr. Jessie's life was extraordinary, and the book is very interesting. This is Old Pioneer Road, and it was part of the old Oregon Trail. If you follow this road, you come to Puyallup, Washington, a city that was founded by Ezra Meeker. Ezra Meeker was on the jury during the first of 2 trials that were held for Chief Leschi. Ezra voted for an acquittal. This is the Chief Leschi High School. Well, thank you for listening today, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.